Hello, YouTube. This is Stephen with On My Way to Fire, a personal finance channel about early retirement. So today's video is about slow and steady portfolio growth. And really the main idea is staying invested in our accounts at all times. There's a tendency to have a little bit of panic when the market starts going down, seeing our investments lose value and wanting to just make sure we hang on to whatever's left. And I'm gonna link an article that's a little bit over than a year old, but it had some great information and it's presented better than I could explain it. But the takeaway from that article is you need to stay invested for the top 10, top 20, top 30, all these days of the year where you have the best performance and how your account does if you're not invested during those days. And they actually give a graphic that was current, I think, until late 2024, of how your account would look if you were not invested for those 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50 days. And the amount, the difference is just drastic, showing that large moves during a market downturn, if not given time to recover, can significantly reduce your account and performance over time. And if you look at a period of, say, 25 years, the amount is substantial. So hope you take a look at that article, read it, maybe post a comment back on here, let me know what you think about it. But in general, we've had a crazy year. The S&P 500 just closed over 7,100 for the first time, and that's a huge milestone. Now, before we pat ourselves on the back on a great job and staying invested, if we are still invested, let's take into account that we still have conflicts going on with Iran and the U.S. and these negotiations for the Strait of Hormuz. And that information over the weekend is going to affect the performance for next week in the market overall. So we might see a dip, and that 7,100 might not hold for the next few days. But you never know. Something drastically could change during the course of the week or the next few months, and it goes back and surpasses 7,100. But for right now, that's the all-time high that the S&P has ever been. And that's a huge deal. I looked at the chart for the beginning of the year, and it's just crazy, this V-shaped recovery for the calendar year 2026. It's very drastic. But like I said, before we get ahead of ourselves, we stay invested and we keep our accounts consistently adding money over time, which is called dollar cost averaging. And if you watch any of my previous videos, I talk about lump sum investing, where I'm putting in large sums of money at one time with the intention of trying to time the absolute bottom of a trade. And yes, that can work if you get lucky a few times, but it works until it doesn't. And I've changed my tune to that type of thinking. And what's done is done. What I've invested in the past, for the most part, I still have those shares and I still have those stocks. But what I do is I selectively add and reduce shares over time. If I see a rally, I start cutting back and I'll start selling shares. And if there's a dip, I'll start adding shares. But it's nothing drastic. It could be anywhere from 1 to 2 shares to 10 to 20 shares at a time. But it's not thousands and thousands of dollars. And that's speaking in my personal taxable brokerage account. In general, though, time is the asset. So if you're still working and you're still contributing to a workplace 401k, you're going to have periods where you might even add money. And at the end of a quarter, because of a bad performance of the market, you might actually have less money than you started with, despite putting in money for the entire quarter. And so I'm going to do a series on what I'm going to call a case study. And I think the first one I want to do is on the year 2022. I had a couple bad quarters in a row, followed by some really good quarters and successful years in the years after that. But, just as my thought process during that year was just keep that money invested, keep adding with each paycheck. And I adjusted here and there and actually increased my risk a little bit on stuff that was already down. But that's kind of a separate topic from the main idea, though, which is just to keep the process going. Let's say I got scared and I reduced my contributions entirely. I wouldn't capture that upside when the market eventually recovers. And I think that's the issue that a lot of people have, is they don't know when it's going to recover, so they'd rather retain what they have and not risk losing more. But let's just keep in mind, slow and steady. We just keep adding. We are not concerned about the day-to-day market, what it's doing. We can get excited and celebrate a little win like we just had with the S&P 500, but overall it doesn't change anything. The balance of the account will be higher, but the next purchase will also be higher on those funds because they've recovered. So there's a little sideways movement. I'm fine with that because we're at a point where, I've invested for several months into the year, and we're now just about closing in on the 4th month of the year, which is just about a third through 2026. And I can't believe how quick time goes. It seems like it was just New Year's and just Christmas. But You know, these are why these are reasons why we just don't get sidetracked or discouraged with what happens in the market. We keep investing, we keep adding to our positions, and from time to time, we're going to look back and we're going to rebalance these funds and decide, you know what, maybe these funds are too expensive. I'm going to transfer them back to cash. And I just did the opposite of that. I added to the market while it was down for some of my cash funds. So what I did this last week is I actually readjusted my positions and I reduced a little bit of my stock exposure of my 100% money that's going into my 401k. Okay, that's the allocation, the 100% allocation. I reduced my stock exposure by about 10% and I increased my cash by 10%. So that just means I'm still buying stocks, but I'm cutting back on how much I'm buying and I'm adding to my cash position so that I could rebuild. And that's really my goal for the rest of the year is let's take the time to celebrate the win on this milestone with the S&P. It's going to go sideways. We don't know if it's going up or down from here, but we've done well with investing tilted a little bit higher towards stocks for the beginning of the year because I was only investing about 3 to 5% in cash because I saw the market going down. I wanted those buys during the dip. So now that we're past this dip, it's kind of the unknown. I'm willing to cut my exposure to the stocks by a little bit and rebuild my cash. But overall, slow and steady will win the race, and we're in it to win it. So we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.